Hi, my name is Payton Booth, and I'm going to be talking to you about a study that I took place in at Whiskey Barrel Cider in Pullman, Washington. So what was really fun about this project was that we got to work with one of the local businesses here in Pullman, Washington, Whiskey Barrel Cider. Whiskey Barrel Cider is also run by two individuals that are local to Pullman, Washington. And another cool part is that they use local apples that are actually grown in the Washington State University's apple orchard. Then these apples are pressed and processed to gain a juice that is then fermented to about 7% alcohol content that they use as a standard, and then they go and can add other fruits such as cherry and pear to make some of their more unique hard ciders. Cidery as a profession has expanded quite a lot over the last few years. But what are hard ciders? Hard ciders are basically fermented ciders that are fruit-based, and they were combined with yeast to ferment the product to a desirable ethanol percentage. A flight of 6 of these ciders provided by Whiskey Barrel Cider were evaluated for various attributes during this study. A set of standards were created and evaluated on a 15-centimeter line scale. Each of these standards should have been at 10 centimeters on the line scale. The set of standards that we were evaluating for were clarity, apple flavor, fruit flavor, sourness, sweetness, ethanol burn, and carbonation. Each standard was sampled in 3 different sessions, and during these sessions, each of the characteristics were evaluated at about 10 minutes apart. We wanted to gain confidence that each standard was in fact sampled at 10 centimeters on the 15-centimeter line scale. So here we have a list of all of our materials that we use to create our standards that we'd compare our ciders to. Clarity, we use treetop apple juice. Fruit flavor, we used a dried fruit mix of apples, pineapple, bananas, raisins, craisins. Apple flavor, we compared it to a Fuji apple. Sour taste was 1 teaspoon of lemon juice in 1/3 cup of water. Ethanol burn was 1 ounce of vodka in 6 ounces of water. Carbonation, we compared that to a 7-Up. And for sweet taste was 1 teaspoon sugar in 1/2 cup of water. And again, all of these standards were at 10 centimeters on the 15-centimeter line scale. Each of the ciders were rated on a 15-centimeter line scale for each of the attributes by the panelists. This process was then repeated in order to reduce the possibility of errors while collecting the data. Then the data was combined and evaluated by the use of qualitative descriptive analysis, analysis of variance, and principal components analysis. So here we have a table summarizing the F ratios and degrees of freedom for each of the 6 ciders, and then the asterisks denote a significant difference at p is less than 0.1, and then our F value was 5.74. So these differences were found by comparing the calculated F values to the critical value. If the F value was larger than the critical value, then there were differences between the treatments. There are significant differences between the samples for the attributes of clarity, apple flavor, fruit flavor, sourness, sweetness, and carbonation. You can see that there are also significant differences for the attributes among the panelists for clarity and fruit flavor. So here's another table that displays our findings. It's a table summarizing the mean values of evaluation by the panelists for the 6 ciders that we tested, where different letters in the same column indicate that there were significant differences found between the ciders for that attribute, and also if they have the same letter, then that indicates that there were not any significant differences found. This was analyzed by Fisher's LSD. So here we see a summary of the attributes mean scores on a radar plot. By looking at this, it can be seen that clarity has the largest difference mean score, meaning that this was the attribute that had the most variation between samples. Fruit flavor had the second highest variation, and the rest of the samples had very similar levels of variation between samples. Notice that this does not include the ethanol attribute because it is not found to have significant variance. Here we have a Pearson correlation table with color-correlated boxes, and when looking at this table, it can be seen that some attributes have a very positive correlation. These are the boxes shown in green. They are the ones such as fruit flavor and sweetness, fruit flavor and carbonation, and sweetness and carbonation. Positively correlated attributes have a positive relationship, meaning that as one variable increases, so does the other, and vice versa. The negatively correlated boxes, here shown in red, are clarity and fruit flavor, clarity with sweetness, clarity with carbonation, and apple flavor with ethanol. Negatively correlated attributes have a negative relationship, meaning that as one variable increases, the other one decreases, and vice versa. So these correlations are also reflected in this following figure. Here we have plotted the mean scores summarized on an attribute basis and plotted in a principal component analysis chart, such as a positive correlation between carbonation, sweetness, and fruit flavor, and you can see that there's also a negative correlation between apple flavor and ethanol in this figure. So here we have a biplot of the ciders showing samples in relation to the attributes. It really allows us to see the relationships between the selected attributes and the different ciders. So here you can see that natural, being number 1, has high clarity and some ethanol burn. Our pear cider is sour with some fruit flavor. Cherry is high in sweetness, carbonation, and fruit flavor. Our triple play cider is high in apple flavor. The Dam hard cider is high in clarity and apple flavor. And the Wazoo number 3 is high in apple flavor, sweetness, carbonation, and fruit flavor. So in conclusion, we can clearly say that there were significant differences between each of the ciders and their attributes. They were positively and negatively correlated attributes. Positively correlated attributes in this experiment were fruit flavor and sweetness, fruit flavor and carbonation, and sweetness and carbonation. And those negatively correlated attributes were clarity and fruit flavor, clarity and sweetness, clarity and carbonation, and apple flavor and ethanol. Being able to provide customers with this kind of information would make it a lot easier for them to be able to choose what cider that they would actually want. And some ciders were more similar to each other than others, which is also useful information. And, if they want to stray off from their original cider that they usually get, or if they really didn't like this one specific cider and they wanted to get something completely different. Here's another concluding display of each of the ciders and their attributes. Again, this would be really important for Whiskey Barrel Cider to display maybe in their menus with their different ciders, so that people can really choose a cider that's going to be right for them. Pear, if people might not really realize that one's going to be sour. Things might, they might get people to buy more things or try new things if they know what they are like. What else is great about our study is that Whiskey Barrel Cider can now provide a thorough description of their ciders to their customers, and we can give them that information. We love to help out our local businesses, and especially those that support WSU and then their other agriculture departments. And finally, informed customers are happy customers, and so we think that this study could improve their business.